and then catching ourselves in those moments, and then, bringing a new part on board of being like, hey, whoa, I know you're here and I get it, because there's lots here and there's lots to be scared of, but let's see if you can take the back seat, and I'm going to bring on, this more confident and compassionate part. And that's the whole self, really. In an IFS model, is the going through and finding that whole self, and letting the whole self drive the bus rather than the fear parts, the scared parts.
Hello, and welcome to the Liminal Frequencies podcast, where we dive deep into healing frequencies from our ancestors, frequencies of the earth and stars, sound, color, and light, and all of the subtle ways that we can tap into our unique vibration to awaken the highest timeline and integrate the fullest expression of our being. Now let's dive in. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Liminal Frequencies podcast. We have an incredible conversation today with Melissa Evans Snow, the founder of Inner Wisdom Rising, an inner work facilitator who is dedicated to empowering individuals to navigate their inner landscapes and reshape their relational dynamics, creating secure attachments and conscious relationships with somatic work. She has done numerous trainings with mind-body coaching, integrative somatic trauma therapy, and many other trainings, including working with Peter Levine in healing intergenerational trauma. So wonderful, this type of work that we can step into these shoes and shift what's happened before us that we don't necessarily have control over, but we are empowered in this moment to transform from this day forward. And I have a card from this book to read to you from Tony Carmine Salerno and Lilia Williams, Sacred Earth Oracle. I pulled the card Alchemy, of course, for Melissa. She's an incredible alchemist. And the meaning is that it is up to you to acknowledge an obstacle as impermanent. Regardless of who is to blame, it is your responsibility to defy a false limitation. A quirk or idiosyncrasy is a strength. Bring it out and own it. Individuality is a precious gem. Throw your woes into the smelting pot and craft them into powerful tools. Experiment with what you have and give it value. And without further ado, let's go to the interview. So I want to share with everybody a little bit more about the work that you do, and I wanted just to start off with asking how you dove into all of this inner work and somatic exploration in your own life and your own healing journey.
Oh my goodness, that's a loaded question. But I think, like most people, land on the path of spiritual healing or inner journey, or however you kind of identify with this particular, found path, is through suffering. Really, truly, is through our own suffering and pain is what creates this immense amount of discomfort and pain, and we dig in and try to move through it and come out the other side and transform it. And I think for me, my suffering was so intense from a place of just lost identity. I worked for a family business for 17 years, and I was married very young. I'm still married. I've been married for 18 years. I have two beautiful children. I was married at 21. So, and I worked for my father, and I worked for family members, and there was really amazing things about that environment, but there were also very toxic things about that environment. And when my father and my family decided to close the business and retire, this was something that I had other jobs throughout the years, but I always found myself coming back in. And in the later years of my time at that company, I really felt that that was going to be where I was supposed to be, and that's what I was supposed to do. And I kind of took on that identity and wanted to be a business owner and wanted to take over that company. And he decided that he was ready to retire. And, you know, him having so many years within that company and having to work so hard as much as he did, he really wanted me to not buy it and not do what he did and follow in his path. So I think, you know, he basically said to me, I'm gonna put this up for sale and we'll talk if it doesn't sell, but I think this is the path. And I mean, he's worked hard his whole life, so I accepted that being the case, and it did sell. And I got a job offer with a new owner, and I got asked to stay on and got a really fancy title. Soon after, I just started to fall apart, and my health was suffering and my anxiety was high. I was struggling with things like OCD, depression and anxiety to a pretty high degree. I have like cleaning rituals. When I came home, I'd have to bleach my floors every night. I only ate very specific foods. And it wasn't until one day my son now, who's 15, was 10 at the time. And he came into my room as I'm sitting on my bed and getting ready for work in the morning. And I'm just crying because that's what I did every morning before I'd have to go to work. And he said, you know, Mom, if you just quit your job, maybe you wouldn't cry so much.
Aww.
And it was that moment that I knew, I'm not only affecting me, I'm now affecting a tiny being. And he is seeing this.
Wow.
He's seeing what this current situation is doing to me. So I ended up taking a medical leave, and through that leave of absence was an opportunity. It was an opportunity for me to really start to dive deep into looking at myself and my life and the things that I had taken on as identities. And from making a long story short, from there, I decided that I was gonna go and do my yoga teacher training. And this was completely polarized opposite from who I was. I wanted something so drastic, so unlike me.
What was the company about that you left?
It was a rental business. So we did parties and caterings, and I mean, we didn't do caterings, but we rented all of the equipment that caterers would need. We do like large size festivals, tables, chairs, dishes, that kind of thing. So
wow.
Yeah, and it was, so I mean, I was always in events, and I always thought I would land in it and be in that kind of industry, in that business. But I decided first and foremost, I need to go and do something for myself. And I did 200 hours of my yoga teacher training. And then from there, I started to, you know, dive into the theory of yoga and the meditations, and it led into body work. And I spent 3 years doing my fascial stretch therapy certifications, to Thai yoga massage, to energy healing, to chakra work, and opened a body work practice. So yeah, it was a lot. And then COVID happened. And with all of the new regulations that came in for different practices and different facilities, I had to close. And it was open close. I'm sure there was a lot of people that went through a similar experience as I did, being a massage therapist or bodywork practice. And then as I was in the kind of downfalls of COVID and not working, I started diving in deeper into more mindset stuff and trauma and inner child healing. And as I'm diving into all of these things, the layers that are coming off of me, I am dealing with less anxiety. I'm having less need to wash and clean my floors. Like, I'm healing myself as I'm first and foremost. I mean, that was truly the shift that needed to happen first. And I never actually thought I would walk out and teach a yoga class in my life. And I actually taught very little yoga.
Mm.
I did some private yoga. I taught children yoga. I taught my kids yoga. I taught family members yoga. But ultimately, the yoga, the 200 hours of yoga, was the foundations of what propelled me to sit on this path and then continue to go, because I felt such a shift inside of myself. I was like, I am not any of the things that I ever thought I was in terms of identity, right?
Wow, that's so exciting. And talk about going inward, but the COVID journey was definitely one of going inward for a lot of people and finding, for me, I felt finding this emotional, psycho-spiritual root of the illnesses that I had been treating in the physical body. And I was like, oh no, there's so much more. And I need different tools, and I need to develop these different tools to deal with what's actually going on, what's in front of me.
Yeah. And a lot of people, right? Like, a ton of people say during that time was an opportunity for them to reset, rethink, and like renegotiate the terms of their life. And I'm grateful that 2 years prior to COVID, I had an opportunity to start digging in and doing my work, because at the degree that I was dealing with an OCD, um, COVID would have been really hard. COVID for
Yeah.
me would have felt, and there was moments that it did feel really hard, and I was scared when it first started to happen, and I was being like, I was definitely noticing that I was still having triggers.
Yeah.
But the more that I leaned in and started digging into NLP, trauma work, inner child healing, all of that stuff, it just started to lift and release these layers. And I do not wash my floors outside of what you would consider.
Well, it's amazing too, because people always talk about COVID, how there was such a shift and it was such a like a trauma and etc. But what about like 2019, 2018? Like that was such a pressure cooker, and people were trying to continue just to run around the country just maintaining their lifestyle, maintaining their income level, maintaining their social status, and all of these things. And I definitely felt that pressure cooker during that time, and I felt things kind of trauma and things catch up with me, and start to lay the groundwork for like really going inward for a little bit and really diving
In.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at it through the nervous system lens, right? If we're living our life through, I'm going to use a capitalist kind of societal pressure of like the rat race. And we've all experienced this I think, in different degrees, different scenarios, different rhythms and cycles through life. And it's just when we have that high level of functioning where we feel that we need to kind of continue to go to the next level or move, or we're in survival of like, when's the next paycheck coming, we're trying to pay this bill, we got to get the kids here and then groceries and then this, and it's just, there's always so much on the to-do list. When we're forced to pause and there is no external like the running to or the continue to go stops, that in itself is like awakening of like, I feel like I need to be doing right now and I have nothing to do, because this is what's been programmed on a nervous system level.
So many of us can't even be with ourselves. If we have like 2 minutes to ourselves, you know what happens? You pull out the cell phone and you start scrolling, and it's a really interesting practice to like, when those moments happen and you really want to go into like your to-do list or your shopping list or your phone, like just to go into your heart and to be like, what's there right now? Like, what am I running away from?
Yes, that's huge, and that's for a lot of people. I was teaching a class just a couple weeks ago, and that's what we were talking about. And I think that there's a really big difference between our mindset, and our nervous system. And they're all integrated. Don't get me wrong, they're not separate, but mindset will get us so far and it will help us bypass our internal signals and our nervous system if we're really, really good and strong at being in our mind. But when we think in a somatic sense and we drop into our body and we start to look at maybe something that we avoid. I love doing this with clients. It's like when you think of the thing that you're avoiding, are you avoiding taking your car in and getting oil changed? Because that thing just feels so big. Is it looking at your bank account? Is it calling a person and having a tough conversation? Like, think of the one thing that feels like that you're avoiding doing, and then think about what it feels like to move towards that.
Yeah.
Generally, there's a somatic feeling of like, oh, or stuckness comes in, or resistance, or this feeling of pulling back. So when we tune in, when we slow down and drop in to our heart centers, and we just take a moment and center ourselves through our breath, and we think about that thing, and we start to check into what those somatic signals are, there's information. There's so much valid information in that sensation of being stuck.
Yes. And to witness something, anything that is going on with you, just to witness it is such a powerful sensation and a powerful shift.
Huge. So when we mentally bypass ourselves with mindset,
or spiritually,
spiritually, but like when we're in our cognitive mind and we're either moving against those body signals and we're bypassing them, we're missing information, and we're also breaking a piece of inner trust and self-trust.
Yeah, I love that. That resonates deeply.
Yeah, so that's been like something that I've discovered on this journey, and I think a lot of clients are able to identify that one particular thing that they're currently avoiding in their life, and then they can tie in that sensation and that somatic feeling in their body, what it feels like to move toward the thing that they're avoiding, and then just getting curious on what's there.
Mm-hmm. And what's a good practice for that? Would you suggest people, just focus on their sensations when they address something that they are avoiding?
Yeah, I mean, if you're working with somebody who is completely been so disconnected, like a lot of people have been completely disconnected from their body in so many ways, whether it's through trauma, whether it's through just running survival patterns, and for so long. Um, a lot of people are really comfortable just being in their brain and thinking things and analyzing things over and over and over again. And sometimes we can be at our desk on our computer and we're in our head and we completely just forget we have a body that exists below our neck. So one of the best and easiest practices to do is really just asking your body to show you what yes feels like, or show you what no feels like, and just dropping in and paying attention and seeing what arises within there. Even maybe, you can say, what does maybe look like? And there'll be some sort of sensation, fluttering, aliveness, activation that comes in. And it's different for everybody. It's not cut and dry. I can't say that you'll have like this huge feeling of expansion, like when you say yes to yourself. That's not true, right? And if somebody tells you that, that's not true, because our body is so unique. We're our own individual person, and we have so much that makes us up. So it's just starting to do those little tiny practices and learn the language of your body.
Like somatic muscle testing.
Yes, that's exactly it. Muscle testing is huge, for sure. And that's yes, right? Asking your body yes or no.
Yeah. Yeah, just checking in with yourself, just witnessing yourself, just being like paying yourself the attention to listen is enough to make a big shift.
Yes. And if we're not in the habit, visual cues, anchoring into visual cues, finding an object that you sit with for 5 minutes. And this is the object, you're going to kind of run through your mind. This is the object. When I see this object, I'm going to remember to pause. This is going to help me and remind me to slow down and pause. This is going to be my marker, my cue to take a breath in,
Yeah.
and just hand over heart. So you can put it in your car, on your rearview mirror. You can put sticky notes on your mirror. Like, it can be anything. And you can put them all over different rooms in your house. But when you make eye contact or you land on that specific object, it's there to anchor you back into yourself. So
I love that, because
kind of
when you said object, I thought of this, which is right by my desk. For those of you listening, this is like a chunky piece of fluorite, just super cubular. And I keep it by the computer because it supposedly helps the technology to work a little bit better. But what I immediately thought of was, you have crystals, and crystals have memory in them, and you can program your intention with the crystal, because you might forget and you might move on, but the crystal will have that memory within its cells, that you can have that crystal with you and know that that crystal is carrying it for you, and you can continue to do your work.
100%, yes. Yes, that's awesome. Keep it up with the crystals. Anything that you feel that is meant for you and you feel, an attachment to or gratitude towards, it's awesome.
I love it. So I wanted to talk about shadow work, and this being at the time of recording Scorpio season, it feels very apt for just like these layers that are being shed and these realizations that are coming up. So, I'm curious about your experience, whether it's personally, if you want to share anything personal or with clients. Actually, let's start with just saying what it is, because not everybody has the same definition of shadow work.
You're very right with that. Shadow work has been something that's kind of morphed and twisted and turned in all different directions and across different methodologies and theories, right? So personally for me, one of my mentors, his name is Justin Williams, and he mentioned shadow work, and he talks about the equation of transformation, which is light plus shadow plus action. And his definition of shadow work, and I don't take credit for this, I just think it's so beautiful. Shadow work is about understanding the choice-making mechanisms that have been conditioned into our system and exploring the hidden aspects of ourselves.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And you have a full definition pulled up. I love that.
So when he talks about that, he's really talking about the things that have choices over us in our body, like in our life and in our body. So these are things, conditioned choice-making mechanisms, so conditioned tendencies that we are not consciously aware of, and that they are ingrained into our nervous system. So it can be our responses to different things, our triggers to different people. It can be, here's an example. If you're somebody that struggles to get up every day and go to the gym or find that workout routine, even though there's a deep part of you inside of you that really truly wants it, and you can do a week, 2 weeks, and find that, and then all of a sudden you're back into an old pattern. There's a choice-making mechanism that is underneath, that is not brought into your conscious awareness, to why you can't find that rhythm or that pattern, and that's inside of your nervous system. It's laying inside of your body. So exploring the why is really important in terms of starting to understand why we tend to come in through self-sabotage, and Shadow work is something that I also can look at through parts work, the same thing through parts work. So, or inner child healing as well. So we
For
have
those
all of these.
people listening, can you elaborate on what parts work means to you?
Yeah, parts work is was IFS was created by Richard. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I should know his last name. Richard Swartz, I think it was, and he created parts work as the actually one of the best ways to explain parts work. If you've ever seen the movie, I think it's Pixar's Inside Out, and I think they're actually coming out with another one. So it's about a little girl who's 13 and they navigate all of her different parts. She's got an angry part, a sad part, a joy part, and the movie goes
Oh,
through her internal experience of all of her parts, but it's meant for kids. And really, that's what lives inside of us, is we are made up with a multifaceted parts, and we have polarizing parts, we have manager parts, we have firefighter parts, and we have protector parts, and we have wounded parts. And navigating the world of parts work is something I specifically do in my work. I think it helps us peel back the layers and help us gain some insights on why we still have the choice making mechanisms that we do, or the conditioned tendencies, why we react to certain things, or what triggers us. So we can find out some insights and wisdom. And that's the thing, all of these parts have wisdom, and most of them do want to share it with us, and they really want us to hear what they have to say. So it's just
yeah.
creating that atmosphere and that space, and building back that trust to that those inner wisdom parts
Yeah.
is is how we can create new patterns and create change on a
That's
deep level.
beautiful. And like, it reminds me of, when I studied psychology when I think I was getting out of high school, and I just started thinking, like, wow, the way that the psychology looks at the world, everybody has some type of ailment, like everybody has part of something. And, what I thought of was the dissociative identity or multiple personality, people know it as. And whereas you just, like, you have different parts of you, and in somebody that maybe is a little bit more traumatized, those parts are functioning at an even more extreme, to where they even have different thermostats, different homeostasis, different preferences, different allergies.
Yes. Yes, you've nailed that. And I love that. And Richard Swartz talks about how there's no bad parts.
Yeah.
And right? So, and then it's really about integration, and I think that's back to shadow work. Shadow work is about integrating the unconscious parts into ourselves. And I think that there's a big emphasis sometimes in like healing and spiritual communities about the ideology of like release or letting go or shedding, and I think that's a natural process that happens. But I think really it's about integration,
Yeah.
because we are the whole being, and our parts are here navigating the situation to try to keep us safe, and they're working for us, and they may not be doing, you know, the greatest job when we have a part that likes to self-sabotage. That can be unhelpful at times, when that part kind of shows up and takes over and starts driving the bus. But when we start to recognize these kind of like conditioned mechanisms, coping mechanisms that we have, or these conditioned tendencies like people pleasing or like self-sabotage, we recognize the patterns that they play out in our lives, and when we know they're present, then we get to start to interact with them and have deeper conversations of like, hey, okay, well, I see that you're here, but let's take a back seat now, because I'm actually here, and I got this, right?
Yeah.
So
I'll
it's
share
starting to
with you like
recognize
a
those
practice
patterns.
that I've done sometimes, and it's like, if I have something that's really upsetting that I'm processing, and I'm trying to be productive, and I'm trying to see a client, and I'll say, I really appreciate what you have to say. I want to hear you, emotional body, but for the moment, I would appreciate if you would just leave the room and just take a little bit of integration time, maybe do some journaling, and like, I'll get back with you after, and I don't know why it just works so well. I'm just like, hey, like, let's take a beat here.
Guys, go sit down, pop some popcorn, get a fuzzy blanket, turn on a Disney movie, but you go over there. And it's starting to recognize when these parts are present, and these parts are present and active and alive in us, right? And we're falling into their choice making mechanisms or their conditioned tendencies. And that's where. So it's recognizing that maybe we are self sabotaging right now.
Yeah.
Right. And then catching ourselves in those moments, and then, bringing a new part on board of being like, hey, whoa, I know you're here and I get it, because there's lots here and there's lots to be scared of, but let's see if you can take the back seat, and I'm going to bring on, this more confident and compassionate part. And that's the whole self, really. In an IFS model is the going through and finding that whole self, and letting the whole self drive the bus rather than the fear parts, the scared parts.
And just the witnessing, I think when you witness that part and you're like, hey, I see you. Like, and I see that you're driving, and I don't think it's safe for you to drive right now. I think, like, let's take care of you. Let's give you a minute and sit down and have some juice. Inner child, right? Yeah. Then it's like, oh, I feel seen. I really feel seen. Okay, that's all I wanted.
Yeah. So, I mean, awareness is transformation in itself, for sure. A lot of these parts, when we go into the deeper aspects of parts work, there is an unburdening process. They do carry a burden, which is generally like a belief system, a negative belief system, a limiting belief, could be a past hurt. And that's what this particular part is holding on to, and that's where they're kind of governing themselves from, is this belief system. And when we can tap into a process to allow our parts to unburden and communicate with us on what it is that they are holding on to and why they're kind of showing up the way they are, and that's, again, very rooted in the same type of methodology or ideology as shadow work, right? It's the unconscious belief systems. So I see a lot of different types of methodologies that I'm trained in, but I always see the overlap in how they all can kind of flow and work together, which makes it so unique. But they are very separate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to witness, acknowledge the parts of ourselves that people in just a regular society, a regular social awareness don't want to recognize because maybe it's inconvenient. And it's interesting. I wonder if you have experience with this where even maybe it's your friend and they don't necessarily feel comfortable with the discomfort that's coming up for you. And so they want you to put a Band-Aid on it, and they're like, hey, like, just take some medicine or something, like, calm down. And it's like stirring up the discomfort that people have in just being raw and being with the thing that's not comfortable, that doesn't feel good. That is really when we kind of, I'm sure when something comes up for you, and I know when something comes up for me, I'm like, I gotta be with this. This is time.
Yes, there's, part of the reason why, for me personally, and for why I do the work that I do, and, it's really about increasing our capacity or our window of tolerance to sit with the uncomfortable, to be with what is uncomfortable. And the best way that I can kind of explain this, and that, like, an analogy would be the first day you walk into the gym and you pick up 20 pounds and you start lifting 20-pound weights and you haven't done anything for years. It's going to be pretty hard, and you're going to feel really sore after, and it's going to be a lot of work. But if you continue to show up day in and day out, and you continue to stay consistent, and you start to, in a few weeks, in a month, 6 weeks from now, those 20 pounds are not going to feel nearly as heavy as they did from the first day that you walked in. So when we come up against our emotional baggage or our emotional burdens or big, huge parts that it can ignite guilt or shame within us, they feel huge. They feel so big inside of our system. And we need to respectively work with inside of our own capacity and our own system. But we're really getting, that's the whole point. Is, I mean, you don't go to the gym so that you can leave the gym and never stop going to the gym. You actually go to the gym so you can increase the capacity to withstand more. And that's what it is. So it's getting, and this is really what the inner work is about. It's being able to increase your capacity to withstand more without it feeling like the first day that you walked in there and lifted 20 pounds. It's going to feel, every time, it's going to feel easier and easier and easier to sit with guilt, shame, regret, fear, anxiousness. And the greater the greater the capacity that we grow within ourselves, the greater the capacity we have to hold for others. So that's where that comes out of, and that's how we spill onto the people around us, and being able to hold for them.
Beautiful. Yeah, and a lot of people think of, with a gym analogy, they think something, if it's healing, it has to be painful, it has to be uncomfortable, and it's almost even like a masochistic thing. Like if you got a session, a chiropractic or an acupuncture session or a massage, and if you didn't feel pain, it's like nothing. What really happened? You know.
Didn't work hard enough. Yes, that's another man ideology or belief system that we do tend to carry, for sure. But I think the bottom line in life, yes, you want to get yourself to a point in navigating your life in where your life feels like it's in an alignment with your values and your morals and your goals, and you are not necessarily running the rat race, or you're feeling like you're in survival mode. That's going to substantially reduce the amount of stress, I think, that you feel if you're, running your life in a way that just does not feel in an alignment to really what it is that you want. But as far as the ups and downs of life and the shit that life throws at us, it's never going to change. It's always going to be there. And it's really comes down to, how can we get better at reacting to the shit?
Resilience training.
Right? So this is the training. This is when we dive in and we start to change our perspectives, lift some beliefs, like drop some societal standards, just start to reshape, and it becomes less. The more aligned life that you live, it becomes less, or it becomes easier to manage, for sure.
Yeah, totally. And so we had talked about shadow work, and we had talked about this time of year, like with Halloween and Day of the Dead, and then moving into the winter months, the kind of veil lifting on things, people being a little bit more open, people having darker time of year. And I think you're probably in a similar latitude as I am, like in the Northwest. It's very dark and it's just very dramatic when it is winter. But yeah, being able to go deep and having layers kind of more revealed to you, and knowing that it's a time that people really struggle, like kind of the most, but knowing that there's a shift happening. And what do you notice about that?
So, I mean, winter solstice is kind of that marker of the first return light, right? December 21st, 22nd,
Yeah.
is where winter solstice kind of stems over. And and then we have Christmas, and we go through the holiday season if you don't necessarily celebrate Christmas. But then I think, in a societal standpoint, we're into New Year's and New Year's resolutions and, goals and aspirations and these big kind of things. And for me, like, I think that time of year felt like there was always a pressure or the ideology around it being a brand new year, and we need to create something different and we need to do something different. Where when you look at it in terms of rhythms and cycles with nature, like, we are still in darkness.
Yeah.
So we are still in the depths of darkness and cold. And yes, we've had that first kind of crack of return light, and there's hope that spring is coming, but this is not the time to be laying down massive transformational foundational shifts of like, I'm gonna get up every day at 5 a.m. and go to the gym and do all the things because I need to lose 20
I
pounds.
think it
Like,
was invented
just
by the gyms that to keep the gyms in business. They're like, okay, New Year's, let's go.
right? So there's just like these, like, the way that I just pay attention to your socials, pay attention to what you're absorbing, see what's out there, see what people are putting out there, and see what the messaging is. It's usually about creating something new, creating new goals, creating big aspirations, and we're still in darkness. We're still in the depths of the darkness. And that shift of like planting new seeds and, really fostering what it is that we want to cultivate this year is not until later in the winter and early spring, right? So now is the time to start thinking about these things if we're like energetically aligning ourselves to the rhythms and cycles of nature. It's starting to think about these things, but in a very nurturing, grounded, warming sense, right?
Yeah.
And it's just changing the way that we live according to the cycles of nature, for me personally, has shifted so many things. And it's like there's permission. There's permission right now for me to move slower.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that because
Yeah.
I
It's
got
so
to move
important.
fast in the summer, right?
And it's kind of like how you treat yourself if you're a bear hibernating and you're waking up in, like February or March or something. Like, how do you treat yourself first thing in the morning? Do you like splash water on your face and like pound coffee? Or are you just like, hey, I'm like rubbing my shoulders. Like, I'm just like, hey there, good morning. Like, stretching a little bit and starting to vocalize or sound or like do something that's nourishing for your system rather than shocking your nervous system right away.
It's like when there's a time for that. There's a time for the nervous system shock, but there's also a time for the nervous system to be repaired. And if you're somebody that's coming off of a burnout, you're coming off of, and you're starting to like tune into the ideas that your life is not in an alignment to the way that you actually want to be showing up and the way that you want, and you crave to move slower in your life, you crave to have opportunities to do some inner reflection and maybe even foster some interpersonal relationships on a deeper level. If like these things are coming up to you, but you ran survival patterns of hypervigilance and people pleasing and saying yes to everything and have a never ending to-do list, the nervous system needs to be, nurtured and nourished in a way that is slower, that is gentle, and that is calm, and that feels restorative, and that feels like recovery. But then when we come into that expansion part of us again, when we're looking at growing and being able to kind of withstand things that are uncomfortable, for me, those things look like heat. Those things look like extreme cold. When we put ourselves in conditions, physical conditions, like ice or cold plunges or sauna and extreme heat, but it's done in a conscious way, and it's done with a nervous system that is not on the brink of burnout, or it's done on a nervous system that has been recovered and it's had the time to really learn the steps of tuning in. And there's a lot of foundations built with being able to tune into your body and learn the language of your body. That's first and foremost. But when we're looking to expand our capacity, that's when we want to do some of those shocking things, but in a conscious way, if that makes sense, because that helps us withstand the stress.
Well, I think about like the breath work practices where you kind of basically hyperventilate and get super uncomfortable, but you're laying down, you're warm, you have blankets, or going in the sauna or doing cold plunges. It's like you want to do your shadow work in the sun. You don't want to do it in a swamp. You don't want to be in like a really negative place while you're trying to do some really difficult inner work. Like you want to you want to treat yourself really nicely in your nervous system so that you can process the things that you're not going to be ready to process when you're like walking through traffic or like running from a tiger.
No, 100%. Yes. Like, I hear you on that. And I think that since we have so much access to information on TikTok and Instagram, and we hear, and there's, a culture around inner healing and spiritual healing and stuff like that. And if we're not nourishing ourselves in a deep way, but then we're trying to dive into some of these deeper aspects of ourselves, it can create more trauma. It can create more chaos inside of our system. So, like, caution, if you know that you are disconnected to your body, and the idea of sitting in silence of 2 minutes of meditation or deep breathing feels tremendously uncomfortable, I would probably advise to start there rather than going and signing up and doing a course or working with somebody to do a deep dive of shadow work.
Yeah.
Like, building the foundations of learning the body's language is probably way more important than trying to understand your childhood wounding and trauma.
You're meeting yourself where you're at and seeing like what your signature is and has capacity for. Like, instead of going into this expectation of what other people, like, I'm going to be Wim Hof and I'm going to hike through the desert without shoes.
Right. Yes.
Yes,
and just resourcing, right? So, and this is the thing, when we start to build the language of our body, we start to understand our internal signals and the sensations that we have, and we can start to come into places that feel centered and calm. If you don't have access to that right now, and you dive into something like shadow work or inner child work, and you're triggered, you have no way to resource yourself, and you're just taxing your nervous system in a big way.
Yeah.
And you're working outside of your window of tolerance, and that's dangerous in the sense of leading to more issues in the long term. So I say work on building those resources of centering, coming in, working on nourishing slowness, that self-care piece, and then starting to build in and knowing that you can come in and out of that shadowy work anytime. Go and fill ourselves up and nourish ourselves, and then come back in.
Yeah, and I even knew people that were triggered by the word shadow work. And so I would say trabajo de sombra in Spanish, or like, just working on the unseen, or working with the parts of you that are not integrated or that are unprocessed. And yeah, that's something that people can come into, where it's really, there is no shadow without the light. So you cannot do this in total darkness. Like, you have to have some illumination. You have to have the candle or the stove running, and the wood stove, and you're feeling the warmth inside, and that's when you can illuminate the part that you want to share with you.
Yeah. The light, to me, the light is like resource. It is the vision, it is the mission, it is the purpose, but it's also the things that keep us connected to those things. So if enrich conversations, when you sit down and you have a really inspiring conversation with a friend, and you get to express all your kind of dreams and visions, like, that's light work. When you start to nourish your soul and take the time out and do like the breath work practices. Now, don't get me wrong, rituals will not transform you. Like, rituals themselves do not create transformation. They are here to support you in that transformation. They are here to lay the groundwork in order to. And I think that's, another thing I see. I see people chasing big experiences in order to receive a perceived transformation of what they want, because they want to feel differently so badly.
Mm-hmm. And then not integrating them. And then moving on to the next big thing and the next big thing, like, as if you're gonna find something different than what you continuously find within yourself, that just wants to be seen in a different light.
Yes. So, I mean, I say yes, I'm all here for a ritual or, practices and things like that. And those are what helps us stay connected to the light, which is the mission, the vision, the purpose, and the alignment of what we're moving towards.
Yeah.
Putting the action pieces in there, right? It's really
Yeah.
not about who you were, it's about who you were becoming and in the process of what you were moving towards.
Do you have any rituals that you want to share?
Oh, I mean, I do a lot of full moon stuff around the full moon time. I like to integrate my kids into those practices. It's an opportunity for us to create fun and excitement around family time. I get the kids to journal. I let them write down, things that for them it's wishes. I have like a small one,
Aww.
right? And my older one will write down things that he wants to release or let go of or change. It's just an opportunity for reflection with intention. And then, we'll do a fire in the backyard, and if it feels right, if we want to share some kind words about each other, things that we appreciate about each other, because as much as I'm doing this work and in these processes and have a lot of information and a lot of knowledge, life is still busy, and
Yeah.
you still will find moments of being kind of disconnect and chaos. It's just whether the chaos is, I think, affecting you on a tremendous level, or how it's kind of affecting you in a physical, emotional being.
Yeah.
But there's always this kind of busyness, right? Especially raising young children, and you don't get to have the opportunities that I think you wish you did every day, and that deep level of connection. And for us, a full moon ritual or an opportunity for us to connect. It's just a way of being able to take that time and, say, I really appreciate this about you, and I really do this about you. And I get to hear my kids speak kindly to them, because they're just learning to navigate, their own internal relationship with each other and their own interpersonal relationship with everybody and the dynamics of family and stuff, right?
That's so
So when they
beautiful.
come back and say some kind words to each other, and like, okay,
Yeah.
it really fills up my heart. And yeah, I mean, there's lots of different ones. I think I have a PDF that I could probably pass along to you as well for some rituals.
I love it. So this has been really fun and really enlightening talk. I wanted to ask you one more question. What could people maybe do to get in touch with their inner worlds that are listening out there?
So I like to call it the inner wisdom. My company is Inner Wisdom Rising, and really helping people come back in and find their inner wisdom is what I am so passionate about. And it's the baby steps. I think we've kind of set it out kind of all through this whole conversation. You've touched on it, I've touched on it, and it's like, if you're really somebody who's struggling to get connected into your body, start putting those cues in your room. Start with one breath for 1 second, hand over heart, and just drop in. And it'll feel a little weird and it'll feel a little strange. If you're practiced and you've experienced yoga and you have a good meditation practice, explore questions, ask yourself questions, start to see if you can feel you're in a reactive state, see if you can cue into yourself and pause and see what's here. What's here for me? Why am I feeling the way that I'm feeling? What's behind this? How far does this go back? These are some of these fun, interesting questions, but it just really depends on, I think, where you are in your own personal journey, your own process. And nourishment for sure is probably the number one, so that you can stay resourced and have access to just being able to pause when needed, and it not feeling so jarring or uncomfortable if you're not used to the silences.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing all your bits of wisdom. And let us know where people can get a hold of you, or if there's anything on the pipeline coming up for you want to share too. That'd be great.
Yeah, right now from the end of November to January 18th, I'm hosting community connection calls. They're calls by donations. It's just an opportunity for us to come in and kind of fill up our cups. That's the nourishment I'm talking about. We'll do grounding practices, maybe some journaling, and just open support. You get to hear other people's stories. You get to share if you choose. There's tools, and it's really just about knowing that you're not alone and whatever it is that feels big and you're moving through. And then in January, I have a 12-week program that's opening up to 13 beautiful women for the inner circle. And this is just a process for us to dive in deeper, and we get to learn processes like inner child healing and shadow work and clearing, and we'll learn more about archetypes and rituals, and we'll learn more about the cycles of nature and how to integrate them into your kind of real life.
Awesome. That's incredible. Well, thanks for sharing, and thanks for taking some time out of your day to join us. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and my website is innerwisdomrising.ca. I can be found there, or Inner Wisdom Rising on Instagram as well.
Beautiful.
I appreciate you inviting me and having me on. Yeah. It's always a delight to have a conversation with you, so I appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah, keep crushing it.
Thanks.
Wow, it's incredible to talk to somebody who audaciously goes into those spaces of darkness and in difficulty without avoiding them, knowing that there is gems in it, that there's transformation possible. And I want to read to you the spiritual meaning of alchemy in this book. Life is perpetual movement, and yet life is also still. Life is change, and yet it is also unchanging. You are part of this moving stillness, changing and unchanging through time and eternity. Something is moving within a still part of you, and yet something is still within the moving part of you. Meditate on this. Feel complete oneness in your being. And it's so beautiful that stillness within movement and movement within stillness. And sometimes we move, we walk into the mountains to find stillness within. And sometimes we find that stillness and that dark corner to meditate, and all we find is movement in the darkness of the night. So with that being said, I want you to, if you're available, to drop in to yourself, to close your eyes, just allowing your breath to consciously lengthen, finding that stillness within, feeling your heart, feeling the rhythms of your heart, the rhythms of your stomach and your liver. And as they come together in this beautiful apex of this triangle, an entryway within, like an A-frame, like a beautiful cabin. You step into the door. Maybe you sit down with an aspect of yourself and have a cup of tea. And just simply acknowledge, witness, accept them, love them, being there with them, sharing a little space, a little bit of time. Maybe the snow is falling outside. Maybe the stillness within brings you into a space of realization. The beautiful spaces within us, they help to drive us back home. We can find this home within us. We can find this community and love and connection within us. And fostering that relationship will help us in all of our other relationships in our lives once we decide we're ready to go outward. Thank you so much for joining us today. It has been such a pleasure, and I hope that your day is filled with beautiful stillness and beautiful movement.